Today I'm at Nord Craft Spirits, a local distillery in Minneapolis that makes high quality spirits. I'm going to get a behind the scenes tour and visit their cocktail room. Hi there, are you Chris?
I'm Chris.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having us today.
Thanks for coming.
I am really excited to learn all about this distillery process and what goes on here. I keep seeing this as I drive by from my office and I've been very intrigued.
Well, you're in the right place.
All right, can you tell me how this all got started? Because I know that breweries are a huge thing right now, but I haven't seen very many places like this. So talk to me a little bit about it.
Well, micro distilling in Minnesota is pretty new. Really only going back a few years. We're one of the first distilleries to open. We're not the first, but we're one of the first, and we're the first ones in the Twin Cities to go through a fairly arduous process to get the regulations passed.
You make the spirits here and then also have a cocktail room, is that correct?
Yeah, and when we started, you couldn't do that. When we started, you could only just make the spirits. But my wife and I and a number of other folks, other distillers from around the state, worked very hard and got the legislation passed. So now we can have a cocktail room, so we can serve you a drink.
That's exciting news. All right.
That's the fun part.
That's the fun part. I know. So I would love to get a behind-the-scenes tour of what's going on back there.
So that side of the room, and we can go back there. That side of the room is pretty fancy, but just to give you an idea for some perspective, the still that's right behind you, that little beer keg with some tubing popping out of it, that was our original still. So we've come from that to what we're about to show you back there.
That's incredible, because that looks a lot bigger than what I'm seeing here.
It's a lot prettier.
Yes. All right.
Works a little better too.
Let's go.
All right.
All right, I'm going to follow you because you're leading the way. This is your house. So.
Yeah, right.
Ooh, I can smell it right away when I walk in here.
Yeah, what you're smelling right now is actually some of the alcohol that comes off towards the end of a run. We start with the grain, so let's head towards the back. And this room didn't always look like this. It actually used to be a lot more simple. There were just 4 of these totes sitting on the ground, but as we have grown, we've had to start building up towards the ceiling.
So you started with just that one keg we saw out there. What's your production now?
So now we can do around 2,000 cases, 6-bottle cases. When we first started, maybe in a given year, we could have done 100.
Okay, so here's the grains.
Yeah, so our bin is a little depleted right now. We're getting refilled on Monday.
Okay.
So it's grown in Cold Spring, Minnesota. My father-in-law is my farmer, right? So it's a great hookup. Yeah. He comes down every once in a while. We're due for a visit, so he can fill up the bin.
Which is handy, because then he gets to check in on you guys.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure that's part of it, right? I'm sure that's why he said yes. But he comes in, we bring the grain in, and then we start from that kernel of corn, and we take it all the way through until we get to a bottle. And what most people think of distilleries is that, well, doesn't everybody do that? And the answer is no. In fact, particularly from craft distilleries, a lot of them don't make anything at all. They just slap a label on a bottle. Part of what we want to do at Nord is we want people to get educated, and we want them to see everything we're doing. So if you're in our cocktail room, there's windows right into our production area. You can see every step of the process.
All right, so it starts with the corn. What comes next?
If you were that kernel of corn, you would follow this little tube up here and eventually make it into this hammer mill, where we're going to mill down to basically a round of flour, right? Not quite flour, but a little finer than cornmeal. Yep. And we're going to go through a process called mashing. That corn is stored energy, right? It's a polysaccharide, many, many, many little sugars, right? I like to think of them like a kid's daisy chain, right? But the yeast that are going to make all of our alcohol, they can't eat that. And so we need to do something to break that apart.
Got it.
So we add it in here with some hot water and some enzymes, and those enzymes are going to break the bonds between those sugars. And eventually, once we break them down to where there's just 1 and 2 sugars, or mono and disaccharides, that's what our yeast can eat. And our yeast are going to do all the heavy lifting once we get done with this mashing process. Okay. So once this process is done, we're going to pump it out. And we got a big pump back there, and we're going to pump it into one of these totes here. When we pump it over here, we're going to add some yeast to it. And for vodka, gin, or anything that starts as a clear spirit, it's actually a champagne yeast. We're going to add it into these totes right here. These are each 1,000 liters, right? If you look at these 2 right here, there's a little bit of bubbling going on, right? And that bubbling is happening because as the yeast in there are eating up the sugars, they're creating CO2. As they create CO2, that CO2 is going to mix with the water and create carbolic acid, which is going to lower the pH and keep all the other baddies out of there, right? But they're also going to create alcohol, ethyl alcohol, which is the thing we really want.
Yes.
Right? So this process is going to go on for quite some time. So once this settles down, we're going to pump this off and we're going to put it into what we call the Frankenstill, which is this guy right here.
Yeah.
Now, I am an English major, and I feel like for the other English snobs out there, I have to say that I get that it's actually the creature. It's Dr. Frankenstein, but no one cares that much, and no one really calls me on it that often. So, the Frankenstill.
Okay.
So, everything I've talked about up to this point, similar to what you might see in a brewery. This is where it starts to change.
All right.
So what we're doing here is we're going to fill this tank up with what now we call the wash. We're going to pump that into this guy. It's got an agitator to keep it all spinning in there, and the sides are heated with hot oil. It's going to heat up that alcohol, water, corn mix. And because the alcohol has a lower boiling point than water, it means that it takes a little less energy to turn it into a vapor. The vapor is going to travel up that column, come over to here. When it hits this thing, that's a condenser. We basically just cool it down there. It'll go through this. We call this the parrot's beak. And it'll come out this line right here, and then we have booze. Not the
Is that the technical term?
Booze?
Yeah.
Booze, hooch, liquor. I particularly like it when liquor is just spelled with 2 Ks.
Okay.
Right? This step of the process creates what we call low wine. Right? And we might, we have some right there. You'll see there's actually oil sitting on the top of it.
Actually.
Right? There's a reason for that. So at this step in the process, we don't care about all the things that are in here. Right? We just want to get that wash into a stable state. If it sits there too long, it'll go skunky, just like every beer. But once we get it distilled to this point, this is around 40% alcohol, this will be like this for 100 years. You might think of your, the beer you drink or the wine you drink, it's like, well, that's alcohol. And if you're really nerdy about it, you might know that it's ethyl alcohol. There are many other alcohols.
Right.
Okay? But fermentation doesn't magically just create only ethyl alcohol. Creates a lot of other stuff too. Methyl alcohol, you have acetone, right? Nail polish remover, isopropanol, rubbing alcohol, and a number of other compounds that really aren't so good, right? Some of them are poisonous to you and will make you go blind. So we need to cut that stuff out.
Got it.
So I would not recommend, if you were really hard up, you could drink this, but you would have a ripping headache and it doesn't taste that good.
I'm going to take a hard pass.
That's a solid move. What we need to do to this is we need to turn it into booze that we actually want to drink.
Right.
And for that, we need a fractioning column still, which is what we have behind us. So this, we call this still Zelda, right?
Still Zelda, okay.
We make Fitzgerald gin, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Zelda, it's Fitzgerald's wife.
Got it.
Right? Now, what you can't see in there, but you can see in this one, is that there are a number of plates inside of there, right? And what those plates are going to do, I'll just grab one for you, is they're going to let us separate this booze out. So this one's got 4 plates, there's one that's hidden, and that one's got 20. When you hear someone talk about, hey, this is the best booze I've ever had because it was distilled 24 times, what they really mean is it went through 24 plates.
Got it.
Because every time you pass one of these plates, it's a distillation, right? As that vapor travels up, it's going to condense at the top and it's going to flood this. And then the next vapor coming through is going to get cooled just a little bit. And when you cool it that little bit, then the water, which is less volatile than the alcohol, is going to condense out faster than the alcohol. So there's more alcohol on top than there is on bottom. That's technically a distillation. Right? So we're going to do that maybe only 4 times here, but over here we're going to do it 20 times. And what that's going to let us do is it's going to let us very specifically set aside the methyl alcohol, the acetone, the ethyl alcohol, which we call the hearts, right? And then some of the other stuff that we don't really want, the tails. Right? So if you have bottom shelf handle $7.99 stuff, they're making money off that somehow. And the way they're doing it is that they're cutting very broadly. So if there's 100 gallons that go in, then if you want to get the most product, then you start from the middle and you start cutting towards those heads, right, which is the acetone and all that, and towards the tail, which is the isopropanol and the oils. But you're going to have more of it, so it's cheaper. If you want quality, you cut narrowly. You only get that ethyl alcohol. Some distilleries will recover somewhere between 60 and 75%.
Got it. And what are we looking at here?
Here it's more like 40%.
Okay.
Our vodka is a little bit more difficult to make because there's a particular part of the run that tastes the way that we want it to taste, and it's very fleeting. And so in a given run, say this is a 130 gallon still, we might get 10 gallons. of the alcohol that we can turn into L'Etoile de Nord vodka.
Right.
The rest of it isn't going to really taste like much.
Got it.
And that is what we're going to make gin and our Apple de Nord out of. So what we do is at the end of the day, I'll fill this guy up with about 1,000 liters of booze. And I'll dump in around 80 pounds of botanicals. Of that 80 pounds, around 60 is juniper, because that's the predominant flavor in gin, right? By law. And I'm going to leave it overnight. I'm going to come back the next day and I'm going to cook the whole thing up together. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us a lot more of that juniper flavor. But if you've ever cooked with juniper, then you know that it doesn't taste like the Christmas in a cup or the pine tree that we're used to when we drink gin, right? There's a sweetness to it. There's some earthiness to it. And that flavor we're going to get because we cooked it all up together and we got all those oils out. So with the apple, instead of adding all those botanicals to it, we're going to let it sit to the side and we're going to go get some cider from Pepin Heights. We're going to bring it up here, cook it down a little bit. Then we're going to add our alcohol to it to get it up to 30% alcohol. Add some spices, filter it, goes into the bottle.
This has been very educational. There's a lot to this process, and now.
And this is the Reader's Digest version.
Okay, that was the short version?
Yes.
All right.
The very short version.
I have one final question. So I've heard that, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but if you would take like a lesser vodka, for example, and put it in like your water filtration system, you know those pitchers with like the filter, that and let it go through there, that it's going to then be better tasting or better quality. Is this true or false?
Partially true.
Okay.
Right? So it's not going to be better quality.
Right.
But it might taste a little better. Because what's happening is your Brita filter at home just has charcoal in it, right? And a lot of vodkas are charcoal filters. Ours are not. Now the purpose of charcoal filtering is to smooth out the rough edges. So there's two ways to deal with rough edges. Either don't have any, right? Or have them because you cut a little broader, right, into some of the things we don't want so much, and then smooth it out with carbon filtering. So if you take a sketchy bottle of hooch that you got lying around and pour it through a Brita, chances are it wasn't that good to start with, and so it probably will improve the taste. It's not going to help your hangover though. No.
Oh, good to know. All right, I think what is left to do is maybe try a cocktail. Do you think we could do that?
I think we should.
All right, perfect, let's go. Chris, you've got time making me a drink, but you brought me something else to just take a little sip of. So you make gin and vodka here, but is this something different?
This is something different. This is our Apple de Nord. Fantastic timing, right? So what you got there is straight Apple de Nord, no mixture, no nothing, right?
And
so
this is where the apple cider. The apple cider goes into here?
It's an apple liqueur. It's got some spices in it. It's a little higher alcohol than most apple liqueurs.
That is delicious.
I tend to agree, but I'm biased, so I'm glad you said.
That is really delicious. And you were telling me earlier that there's a drink that you maybe make with this and cream, which would be, it would cut the alcohol a little bit.
Yeah. What's nice about that is it's really easy. If you take a little bit of that, a little bit of lemon juice, boom, you basically have an appletini. Or if you add some cream to it and shake it up, it tastes like apple pie a la mode.
All right, what is this?
This one's a little more involved. I think there's maybe 7 different ingredients in there.
Ty made this for me.
Yeah, Ty made it. So that is we call it the Doc Sportello.
That is delicious.
So it's got some grapefruit in it, some bitters, some tamarind, which I reckon if you know tamarind, then fantastic. Otherwise, it's impossible to describe, I think, but it makes a pretty good cocktail.
It is a very delicious cocktail. Thank you.
Glad you like it.
And thank you so much for the tour.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for treating me to this delicious cocktail.
Outstanding. We should get you some more.
Oh, one. I think one's going to be enough. If you want to learn more about Du Nord Craft Spirits and how to purchase the products they produce, visit our website. Thanks for joining us. Cheers, and see you next week.